Welcome to WT History. In this series, we list all the major events that happened in the world in a year, starting from 1776 to 2024. On January 1st, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring the freedom of enslaved people in the Confederate States. Although immediate freedom came to 50,000 individuals, the proclamation laid the foundation for the liberation of more than 3 million enslaved people as Union forces advanced, marking the beginning of America's Reconstruction era. Only a week later, on January 8th, the Second Battle of Springfield was fought near Springfield, Missouri. Union General Egbert B. Brown led militia forces to victory over Confederate General John S. Marmaduke. Then, on January 11th, in the Battle of Arkansas Post, Union General John McClernand and Admiral David Dixon Porter captured the Arkansas River stronghold, tightening the Union blockade. Later that month, on January 29th, tragedy struck during the American Indian Wars. In the Bear River Massacre, United States forces under General Patrick Edward Connor attacked Chief Bear Hunter and the Shoshone in Idaho Territory, resulting in devastating loss of life. On March 19th, the blockade-running steamer SS Georgiana was destroyed attempting to enter Charleston Harbor. Just a week later, on March 25th, Private Jacob Parrott, a member of Andrews Raiders, became the first ever recipient of the Medal of Honor, along with 6 of his fellow Raiders, recognizing extraordinary bravery. From April 17th to May 2nd, Union cavalry launched Grierson's raid across Mississippi, disrupting Confederate supply lines. Around the same time, on April 20th, the Battle of Washington in North Carolina ended inconclusively. On April 24th, President Lincoln issued the Lieber Code, the world's first formal code outlining laws of war for modern armies. The Battle of Chancellorsville followed from May 1st to May 4th, where Confederate General Robert E. Lee achieved a major victory, but at a devastating cost. General Thomas Stonewall Jackson was mortally wounded by friendly fire. On May 14th, Union General Ulysses S. Grant captured Jackson, Mississippi, opening the road to Vicksburg. And on May 18th, the siege of Vicksburg began, a fight for control of the Mississippi River. Just 3 days later, on May 21st, Union forces began the siege of Port Hudson in Louisiana. On May 28th, a historic moment took place when the 54th Massachusetts, the first African-American regiment raised in the North, left Boston to join the war. The following month, on June 9th, the Battle of Brandy Station, the largest cavalry engagement on American soil, ended without a clear victor. Then, on June 14th, at the Second Battle of Winchester, Confederate forces drove Union defenders out of the Shenandoah Valley. June 17th brought another inconclusive clash at the Battle of Aldie during the Gettysburg Campaign. In July, the Confederacy tested a hand-propelled submarine, the H.L. Hunley, for the first time. Soon after, from July 1st to July 3rd, came the pivotal Battle of Gettysburg. Union forces under General George G. Meade repelled General Lee's northern invasion, resulting in over 50,000 total casualties, the bloodiest battle of the war. The following day, on July 4th, the siege of Vicksburg ended with the surrender of over 30,000 Confederate soldiers, giving the Union full control of the Mississippi River. On July 9th, the siege of Port Hudson also ended in Union victory, securing complete northern control of the Mississippi. Then, on July 17th, Union forces won the Battle of Honey Springs, a critical victory in Indian Territory. The 54th Massachusetts made its heroic, though unsuccessful, assault on Fort Wagner on July 18th, where its commander, Colonel Robert Gould Shaw, fell leading his men. On July 26th, Confederate cavalry leader John Hunt Morgan was captured in Ohio. Days later, on July 30th, the Box Elder Treaty was signed with the Shoshone, though its promises would not be honored. In August, Confederate General Robert E. Lee offered his resignation on August 8th, following Gettysburg, though President Jefferson Davis rejected it. On August 17th, Union forces heavily bombarded Fort Sumter, continuing through the year. And on August 21st, the brutal Lawrence Massacre saw William Quantrill's Raiders kill around 200 men and boys in Kansas. In September, the Confederates evacuated Battery Wagner on September 6th. Then on September 19th and 20th, at the Battle of Chickamauga, Confederate forces won a major victory in Georgia. On October 14th, the Battle of Bristow Station ended in Union success. On October 15th, the submarine H.L. Hunley sank during a test, killing its inventor and crew. On October 29th, Union forces opened a supply route to Chattanooga after the Battle of Wauhatchie. Then came the Battle of Campbell's Station on November 16th, followed by the Siege of Knoxville beginning November 17th, where Union forces held strong. On November 19th, President Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address, honoring fallen soldiers and redefining the war as a fight for human equality. Finally, from November 23rd to November 25th, Union forces under Grant broke the Confederate siege at Chattanooga in the battles of Chattanooga, Lookout Mountain, and Missionary Ridge. On November 26th, the Mine Run campaign failed to break Confederate lines, and on November 27th, John Hunt Morgan escaped prison and returned to the South. Other American developments continued shaping society. On February 10th, Alanson Crane patented a fire extinguisher. On February 24th, Arizona Territory was formed, and on February 26th, Lincoln signed the National Banking Act. On March 3rd, Congress established the Idaho Territory and passed the National Conscription Act, which led to the New York City draft riots beginning July 13th, the deadliest civil unrest in U.S. history. On May 21st, the Seventh-day Adventist Church was officially formed. On June 20th, West Virginia entered the Union as the 35th state. On October 3rd, Lincoln proclaimed a National Thanksgiving Day, and on October 5th, the Brooklyn, Bath and Coney Island Railroad began operation, creating the oldest active route of today's New York City subway system. On January 2nd, the Master Lucius Tar Paint Company was founded near Frankfurt am Main in Germany, the company that would eventually evolve into the world-renowned chemical manufacturer Hoechst. Just 2 days later, on January 4th, a schism in Hamburg led to the founding of the New Apostolic Church, separating from the Catholic Apostolic Church and establishing a new Christian movement. But nature brought tragedy to Switzerland. On January 7th, in the canton of Ticino, the village of Bedretto was partly destroyed by an avalanche, killing 29 people. Then, on January 11th, the roof of the church of Sant'Antonio in Locarno collapsed under the weight of snow, claiming 47 more lives. Yet life pressed forward. On January 8th in England, the Yorkshire County Cricket Club was officially founded in Sheffield. 2 days later, on January 10th, London celebrated the opening of the world's first underground railway, connecting Paddington to Farringdon Street, the birth of the modern subway. On January 21, Adam Opel founded his company in Germany, originally manufacturing sewing machines. And on January 22nd, the January Uprising erupted across Poland, Lithuania, and Belarus, a bold attempt to restore the old Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth's freedom from Russian rule. Soon, radicals from neighboring regions joined the uprising on February 1st. But the conflict also brought tragedy. On February 2nd, Russian hussars massacred Polish peasants at Chista Buda. On January 31, Jules Verne's first adventure novel, 5 Weeks in a Balloon, is published in Paris. On February 17th, the Committee of the Five met for the first time in Geneva, inspired by Henry Dunant's call for humanitarian care in war. This gathering marked the founding of what would become the International Committee of the Red Cross. On March 10th, Prince Albert Edward, heir to the British throne, married Princess Alexandra of Denmark. Later that month, on March 30th, Princess Alexandra's brother, 17-year-old Prince Wilhelm George of Denmark, was elected King George I of Greece, beginning a 50-year reign. April brought remarkable discoveries. On April 13th, the winged victory of Samothrace, an ancient Greek masterpiece, was unearthed and soon shipped to the Louvre. 1 week later, on April 20th, another great sculpture, the Augustus of Prima Porta, was uncovered near Rome. And on April 21st, Polish insurgents won their first victory at Raguva, though the uprising would face defeat just weeks later near Gudiškis on May 8th. Culture and politics continued to evolve. On May 17th, the Salon des Refusés opened in Paris, showcasing works rejected by the Academy, including Édouard Manet's controversial Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe. On May 23rd, Ferdinand Lassalle founded the General German Workers' Association, Germany's first socialist political party. And on May 31st, the first Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe horse race was held. On June 12th, the Arts Club was founded in London by artists and writers including Charles Dickens. Then, on July 1st, the Kingston Loop railway line opened, but cultural repression also rose. On July 30th, the Russian Empire issued the Valuev Circular, banning most publishing in the Ukrainian language. August brought two major milestones. On August 1st, the pharmaceutical company Bayer was founded, and Finland's language gained new legal standing. On August 26th, a newspaper in Helsinki proposed what would later become the modern Finnish flag, a blue cross on a white field. On September 30th, Georges Bizet's opera The Pearl Fishers premiered in Paris. On November 15th, King Christian IX of Denmark took the throne. Only 3 days later, on November 18th, he signed the November Constitution declaring Schleswig part of Denmark, an act that would soon spark the German-Danish War. As the year closed, progress continued. On December 15th, Romania opened its first mountain railway, while in Amsterdam, 22-year-old Gerard Heineken purchased the brewery that would one day bear his name. On December 19th, linoleum was patented in Britain. That same season, France witnessed the first major European outbreak of phylloxera in the vineyards of the Rhone, a tiny pest that would reshape European wine for decades to come. On January 15th, during the French intervention in Mexico, French naval forces bombarded Veracruz. Tragedy struck New Zealand on February 7th when the ship HMS Orpheus sank at Manukau Harbor, losing 189 lives. On March 14th, Queen Victoria granted city status to Goulburn, officially making it Australia's first inland city. In Vietnam, the Treaty of Hue was signed on April 14th, deepening French influence over the region. And beginning on April 21st, Baha'u'llah spent 12 days in the Najibi Gardens in Baghdad, the moment he declared his spiritual mission, now celebrated by the Baha'i faith as the Festival of Ridvan. On April 30th, at the Battle of Cameroon, 65 soldiers of the French Foreign Legion held off 2,000 Mexican troops, a defining moment in Legion history. In May, the Granadine Confederation transformed into the United States of Colombia, and French forces captured Puebla, solidifying their occupation of Mexico City by June 7th. Ideas and cultures traveled far. On June 13th, Samuel Butler published Darwin Among the Machines, foreshadowing modern debates on artificial intelligence. On June 27th, 5 young men, later known as the Choshu Five, secretly left Japan to study in London, signaling Japan's gradual opening to the world. On July 1st, slavery was abolished in Suriname and Curaçao under Dutch rule. Days later, Queen Victoria transferred control of the Northern Territory to South Australia. And on July 16th, Japan witnessed its first modern naval battle at the Battle of Shimonoseki Straits. The New Zealand Wars resumed on July 17th as British forces invaded the Waikato. In August, the British bombarded Kagoshima in Japan, while rebels in the Dominican Republic raised their flag in Santiago, beginning the Dominican Restoration War. Later in the year, New Zealand opened its first steam-operated passenger railway in Christchurch on December 1st. The year ended with sorrow. On December 8th, a catastrophic fire destroyed the church of the company in Santiago, Chile, killing between 2,000 and 3,000 people. And throughout the year, conflict continued in West Africa with the beginning of the Second Anglo-Ashanti War. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I'll see you in the next one.